Just after 11 p.m. on the 12th of October 2002, a coordinated suicide attack devastated two nightclubs on the Indonesian island of Bali.
People are burnt everywhere. I just don't believe what happened here tonight.
202 lives were destroyed and countless others wrecked in an indiscriminate act of revenge against young Westerners. This film reconstructs the hour before the bombs explode. As each minute passes, the new faces of post-9/11 terror emerge. The killers close to home who seek to imitate their heroes by blasting their way to paradise. Ali Imran, a 33-year-old religious student, prepares to make a delivery. Within the next hour, he and a small group of extremists will have murdered and maimed hundreds. At a safe house well away from Bali's thriving clubs and bars, Ali Imran collects the first of 3 bombs.
Udah oke.
Oke, jalan dulu.
He will later drive 2 suicide bombers and a van carrying more than a ton of explosives to within a few meters of their targets. The attack will begin with a symbolic gesture against America. It will be followed by a terrorist outrage intended to be Southeast Asia's 9/11. It's Saturday night in Kuta, the tourist capital of Bali. Large groups of Australian rugby and football teams add to the surfers and backpackers from Europe who are starting to crowd into Kuta's largest night spot, the Sari Club.
Pub's full, it's pumping, everyone's just on holiday, being silly, having a ball, and it was just this crazy throng. There's the smell of the cigarettes and the beer and the music, and just that pumping, this holiday feeling that was great, you know. Mark, my boyfriend of 2.5 years. The first time Mark had ever been to Bali, and it was my 20-something trip, so I was just really happy to show him around.
Well, I was in Bali for an end-of-season football trip. Straight away, lots of the guys ordered a drink and went in and started dancing on the dance floor and just having a really good time. We're an amateur group from the Kingsley Football Club. 90% of the boys was their first trip ever on a plane, and it was definitely their first trip to Bali, and they were blown away.
The place was packed, and it was a happening place. I could see or look around. Beautiful rugby players were there, and obviously the girls around it too. You know, my husband and I were probably the oldest one in there.
Any foreigner in Bali used to go to the Sari Club or Paddy's Bar. In fact, my first kiss with Dan was in the Paddy's Bar. I met Dan by the river, fell in love and got married 2 years later. We shouldn't have really gone back because we'd just come back for our honeymoon, but you know, it was one of those things, it was where we'd met, it's where we got engaged there as well the year later, so it was kind of like our place.
We were actually on our way down to the Sari Club and we had a change of heart and we decided to go across the road, which was the Paddy's nightclub. It's a 2-storey place, so downstairs probably 500-600, upstairs about 300 or 400 I suppose. There's dance floors upstairs and downstairs. As we walked in, we noticed, a mate of mine, Jason, noticed a couple of girls at a table. And we sort of parked ourselves there, and it was pretty much, you know, pretty close to the bar.
In a wealthy suburb 10 kilometers north of Kuta, The American consulate is closed for the day. Ali Imran arrives with bomb number 1. 500 grams of TNT, a detonator wired to a mobile phone that will trigger the explosive. And another ingredient, designed simply to add insult: human excrement. The bomb is small. When it's detonated in 55 minutes' time, it will cause no significant damage and will only slightly injure a passerby. But it will be the first in a sequence of explosions that will end in mass murder. At a rented apartment in Kuta, Imam Samudra, the so-called field commander for the Bali bombing, waits for news of Ali Imran's return from the American consulate. In the next 50 minutes, Bali will be the first place in Southeast Asia to suffer that most brutal expression of religious extremism, a suicide attack. So where did the order for the assault on Bali come from? And why? Al-Qaeda has long been the prime suspect. But 4,000 miles away, in Afghanistan, its power base has been shattered by the American-backed invasion. Without a safe haven, Al-Qaeda's ability to coordinate attacks around the globe is now thought to be seriously degraded.
There's no indication that Al-Qaeda was ever able to re-establish a firm territorial beachhead in any other part of the world that was akin to what it had in Afghanistan. And what it had in Afghanistan was the critical element that allowed it to operate in that very structured manner.
The trail to the heart of the Bali conspiracy begins in a hill town in central Java, Indonesia's most populous island. 2 months before the Bali bombing, text messages summon the key conspirators to a meeting. Ali Imran is the youngest of 3 brothers who will play a major part in the attacks. Abdul Mateen is a second-hand car dealer and a trained bomb builder. Idris Al-Gambrot works as a mechanic but has moonlighted as a jewel thief. Ali Imran's older brothers, Mukhlas and Amrozi, together with the bomb technician Abdul Mateen, and Idris, the gopher, rendezvous with the commander for the bombings, Imam Samudra. Detailed information about what happens at this meeting will later come from the bombers themselves. All of them affiliated with a secretive organization known as Jama'ah Islamiyah, or Islamic Community.
The interesting thing about the Jama'ah Islamiyah bombers was that they all confessed, every one of them. There was not one person that didn't confess. As far as they're concerned, you know, the fatwa issued by Osama bin Laden gives them authority. You know, they've got nothing to be apologetic for.
The most complete confession comes from Ali Imran, the only bomber to express remorse for his actions.
Samudra mula kencang-kencang atas nama Allah dan ungkapan Quran. Tujuannya ialah merancang tentang meledak bom di Bali. Ledakan bom di Bali dirancang oleh Samudra dan Mukhlas. Ya, Bali adalah tempat yang sesuai karena ramai orang rembulek dari Amerika dan sekutunya berada di sini. Amerika dan sekutunya telah banyak menindas orang-orang Muslim, terutama di Afghanistan. Dan memang harus mereka menerima akibatnya.
In the weeks before the attack, Samudra himself gathered intelligence on likely targets. He and Ali Imran scouted Kuta's busiest street and found what Samudra thought were Americans.
Aku dan Imam Samudra mula lihat-lihat di jalan legian di Kuta. Khasnya Kelab Sari.
They believed they were blowing up Americans because normally we'd have a American task force would call into Bali about every 3 or 4 months on leave. The fact is that if they'd asked anybody, they would have found out there were no Americans in there. There were mainly Australians and British, and but from their perspective, they look and they're short hair, young, fit men, lots of them. They know nothing about rugby, so they go, okay, it's the American Navy.
Banyak minum.
At the heart of the conspiracy are Samudra and Mukhlas, both of them religious firebrands.
Imam Samudra is just a complete zealot. Believes utterly in the fact that Indonesia has to become a Muslim state.
Maksiat.
Mukhlas, I'd say cleverer than Imam Samudra, more of a thinker, very radical, but more of a thinker.
It was Mukhlas' extremist eloquence that inspired his younger brothers, Amrozi and Ali Imran, to join the conspiracy. Mukhlas will travel to Bali to organize the bombing. But as a senior figure in Jemaah Islamiyah, he is considered too valuable to be caught in a police dragnet and will leave the island in the days before the attack. In the absence of Mukhlas, Samudra would be the commander on the ground. He allocates jobs to each of the conspirators. Amrozi would be responsible for buying and adapting the van that would carry the ton of explosive. He'd also disguise it, altering the vehicle identification number on the engine block. Ali Imran would be the coordinator, responsible for making sure the bombs are delivered to their targets. Idris would handle the bills for transport and safe houses, settling everything in cash.
Martin, kamu urusin campuran proses peledakan.
Abdul Mateen would help build more than a ton of high explosive, using TNT and a mixture of weed killer, sulfur and aluminium.
Faham semua? Kita berjihad.
The original plan for Bali was to attack exactly a year after 9/11. Was this yet more evidence of an Al-Qaeda connection? Or simply a desire to emulate what was, to the conspirators, an heroic act? So far, at least, a proven link back to Al-Qaeda hasn't been found, either in planning or finance.
There's a lot of speculation as to where the money came from, but I haven't come across any verified reports that show this very clear paper trail leading back, if you like, to eventually to Al-Qaeda.
In the Bali bombers' safe house, two intensely nervous figures go through the mental preparation to end the lives of hundreds of people, including their own. With just 45 minutes to go before the explosions, Idris keeps a close watch on the two would-be martyrs for any sign that they're losing their nerve. Iqbal will wear a vest with a kilo of TNT packed into it and walk into Paddy's bar. Jimmy will park the van outside the Sari Club, wait for Iqbal to detonate his explosive, and then push the trigger on a huge incendiary bomb. At his apartment 4 kilometers away, Samudra waits for news that the attacks have been set in motion.
Iya. Apa berita? Lagi menunggu Imran. Beritahu aku kapan dia pulang. Okey. Aku kira dia enggak lama lagi. Bagaimana dua rakan kita di sana? Gelisah. Tapi mereka sedia. Jangan khawatir. Dan si kecil putih itu? Semua sedia. Bagus. Telepon aku. Okey.
For all their planning, the Bali bomb conspirators had made a number of elementary mistakes. Jimmy, the intended suicide driver of the van, has a significant handicap. He can't drive.
Belok sini. Belok sini. Aku nggak bisa.
But that might not have mattered. A few days earlier, the bomb builders came close to ending their mission prematurely. Dragging a cabinet loaded with explosives across a floor covered in spilled chemicals produced a not entirely surprising result.
Apaan ini?
Tahu. Tiba-tiba aja ia ledak.
Ledak. Kapan 4:30, aku terdengar bunyi ledakan. Tetangga datang menanya. Dibilang Idris, ledakan itu terhasil dari ban mobil. Langsung, malam itu juga kami berhenti membancu.
"45 minutes before the explosions, Ali Imran returns from the American consulate. With Jimmy's inability to drive, he's been ordered to take the van and the two suicide bombers close to their intended targets.
Waalaikumsalam. Semua okey?
Okey. Rasa nggak ada orang lihat aku.
Nggak ada, bagus.
Kalau bisa, aku nggak mau kemudikan van itu.
Sudah diputuskan. Kamu harus.
Dengar sini. Kapan Samudra pilih supir untuk jihad? Kamu nggak pikir? Dia seharusnya ngerti atau pastikan orang itu bisa kemudikan atau enggak. Masih nggak ngerti. Kenapa aku yang harus kemudikan van itu sampai habis?
Tabah hati, Imran. Insya Allah, mati kita ada banyak untuk difikir. Memang mereka itu nggak bisa kemudi mobil. Aku ikut dari belakang, naik sepeda motor.
Jadi, kenapa kamu aja yang nggak kemudikan van itu?
Nggak bisa. Bom itu melakukan aku. Gimana kalau aku buat silap? Ya udah, buat periksa kali akhir.
Kita harus kerja dalam tempoh 2 minit, oke?
The van bomb is now complete. 14 filing cabinets are crammed with explosive. They will be wired to a set of detonator switches and triggered by Jimmy.
Yuk. Ikut aku. Ayo.
Iqbal's bomb vest has 10 tubes of TNT stitched into the lining. The two suicide bombers have practiced their lethal drill all afternoon. Now they have their dress rehearsal.
Coba ini. Ini untuk bersenjata, untuk meledakkan bom. Ngerti? Ingat, waktu kamu sampai di sana, buka yang ini. Ngerti? Ya. Ya udah, buka. Ini untuk bersenjata. Ini untuk meledak. Betul?
Ya. Ini untuk bersenjata. Ini untuk meledak.
Udah, minggir. Ayo, masuk.
On his way out, Idris finds a cell phone that has wires attached to it, but he doesn't realize its significance. He simply puts the phone in his pocket and leaves.
Jam 10:30, aku kemudi van penuh dengan bom. Idris di belakang atas Yamaha. Jimmy di kiri aku. Dan Iqbal di ujung, pegang vest bom.
"20 minutes before the bomb blasts, and two of Bali's most popular night spots, Paddy's Bar and the Sari Club, are filling up fast.
Came in spits and spats, probably by about 1:45, about 10 o'clock we're all in there. Obviously when 20 of us were in there, the place sort of blew a little bit more. So we sort of took over the place pretty early. I reckon probably by about 11 o'clock, I noticed it was really full with people, and I would say probably 350 people.
The person we were with suggested that we should go out at the Sari Club because she had heard good things about that place, that it was the happening place in Kuta. So we said, okay, well, let's go and start off our vacation together pretty nice. And the place was packed.
So I was just having a great time with Mark, my boyfriend. And we're just being stupid. We're dancing down to the music, having a ball, and life's for living. I think the song slowly started just degrading into just cheesier and cheesier stuff. And I think Cher came on, Do You Believe in Life After Love? And Mark said, look, I've got some pride here. You know, I'm not dancing to Cher. Come on, guys, I'm going for a drink. So he wandered off, and I said, yeah, see you in a minute. That was the last time I spoke to him. Yeah.
It's taken Ali Imran almost half an hour to drive the badly overladen van the 8 kilometers to the center of Kuta. He pulls over, about 100 meters short of the Sari Club.
Semua okey. Udah bersedia. Aku okey.
Bang, nanti sebelum keluar ingat pakai vest tu.
Ya. Ya udah.
Ada masalah?
Enggak. Yuk kita.
With less than 8 minutes to go before detonation, Jimmy now has to maneuver the van closer to the nightclubs. It will stretch his pitiful driving skills to the limit.
If you were going to plan this, you'd hopefully get a competent driver. But they still got the bomb there. I mean, at the end of the day, they still got the bomb to the place where they were going to blow it up. They still got Iqbal to blow himself up in Paddy's Bar.
The van stops again, this time just 30 meters away from the two nightclubs. Iqbal will travel the rest of the way to Paddy's Bar on foot. If he fails to detonate the TNT in his vest, he could just walk away. But if Jimmy loses his nerve now, the bomb builders have added a timer, a booby-trap motion sensor, and, they think, a mobile phone, acting as a remote detonator. About 2 kilometers away, Ali Imran and Idris pull over, intending to start the sequence of explosions.
Tunjukkan nomor itu.
Tapi tunggu.
Untuk apa telefon satu lagi?
Yang mana dong?
Yang ini.
Kenapa kamu nggak pasang ke ban?
Tidak. Kenapa?
Aduh. Telepon ini yang biasa kita gunakan untuk panggil. Untuk ledakkan ban. Kamu seharusnya pasang ke lemari ban. Ya udah, lupakan nomor itu. Sekarang kita nggak bisa ledakkan ban dari sini.
Without the remote detonator for the van, all they can do is explode the small bomb at the American consulate.
Yang Anda tuju sedang sibuk. Cobalah beberapa menit lagi.
Beres.
Jimmy reaches the Sari Club. Iqbal is just a few steps from Paddy's Bar. Jimmy's been ordered to wait for the explosion from Iqbal's bomb before he detonates his own.
Place was completely black. I tumbled, I went straight up in the air, it felt like. I had a girl in my arms, I don't know where she came from. I was in this stream where things were happening, but I really wasn't quite sure what was going on. I remember thinking to myself, where's the guys? Where am I? Why is this girl next to me? Why can't I see anything? I remember saying to this young lady that we need to get out of here, and as I was walking out I can remember stumbling, and as I was looking down thinking what was under my feet, and then it really hit me. I saw people.
You had the bomb at Paddy's Bar, which was TNT. That burnt fairly well because Paddy's Bar was set up like a beach chalet, so you had lots of leaves and rubbish like that, which all burnt. That was the attractor bomb, to bring everybody out onto the street to kill more people.
The bomb in Paddy's Bar is heard above all the noise in the Sari Club.
It was weird because it was a very loud explosion. Yet at the same time, dulled because obviously it wasn't right with us. So it was kind of like, you know, whoa, what the hell was that sort of thing. The lights went out and the music went off for a second and everyone stopped. And the music came back on, the lights came back on, and we sort of went, that was odd.
I'd know Bali, I'd know the noises, I know the sounds that happen. I heard some screaming and noise, but I just thought it was Bali. It was just, it wasn't anything different.
From the witnesses, they heard Paddy's Bar explode, they stood up, they had enough time to stand up, look to the right, and then the one in the car exploded.
It makes every bone in my body just shudder, just taking myself back there and remembering it again, because it was just something so horrific and so awful. The air just went It was the most amazing, bright, yellow light that came flying towards me.
The first knowledge was just a very strong impact pushing me towards the ground.
It's a noise that I'll never ever forget, ever in my lifetime. It was a sonic noise, it was a sonic boom.
Suddenly everything just went boom!
As soon as I fell on the ground, I mean, it's a blank. I lost conscience.
And I remember being tossed up into the air. And I remember everything flying, bits of building, everything.
I was thrown to the ground. Only reason I know that, because I got myself up off the ground.
I remember just being thrown into the air like a rag doll and then just coming down with a thud, and then there was this horrible, eerie silence. Just stuff piled on top of me and I couldn't figure out what had happened. And I remember just lying there thinking, okay, well, something really, really bad's just happened. And obviously I'm pretty stuffed, I'm dead. And I remember lying there thinking, wow, it's really annoying, I wasn't ready to go. And then everyone started getting up and surging, and that's when there was the yelling and the screaming began. Everyone that could move started to.
The roof had caved in and bars had been exploding, people were everywhere. And it was like someone on the other side of us had this torch shining through, and it opened this little light. So I just went, let's go there without a hesitation. The only instinct that I saw at that point was to get out of this bloody thing.
Woke up eventually because people were trying to find the exit and were actually walking on my back. I remember I was faced by taking a decision. Like, Sophie, if you do stay pinned down here, you're gonna burn, you're gonna die. And you've got to get out of here. I just pushed myself and, was thinking very hard about my family and the people I love, and this is, I think, what gave me the adrenaline to get out of there.
I felt the heat before I felt the pain. I realised that my left-hand side of my body was on fire. And I suddenly realised I got the hell out of there.
One of the first on the scene, moments after the explosions, is Richard Poor, a news cameraman from New Zealand.
Huge, it's scary. And I sound like a TV journalist.
Being the fact that I was working for a television station, I tend to have my camera with me all the time. So my first instinct was just to grab the camera and bolt outside.
People are burnt everywhere. There's an LPG container, there's people dead, there's everything.
I've never seen anything like it. Just met by just this wall of people coming towards me with just horrendous injuries. There were people running everywhere. There was a guy running, screaming, or not running, being carried, screaming, just let me die, and he was missing a leg. There was just...
By now, both clubs have started to burn like furnaces, with hundreds still trapped inside.
It was the most disgusting smell in the air, which obviously was the burning bodies.
I was running up the road screaming, and there were quite a few people there injured and not injured. And I remember there were some Indonesians on a motorbike, and I remember running up to them saying, help me, help me, help me, I'm on fire, help me, take me to hospital. And they just backed away, hands up, backed away. They were obviously clearly terrified of seeing me like a fireball coming towards them. Lucky that there was an Australian guy called Noel, and he had a blanket in his hands and saw me and came running over and basically put the flames out and held me upright.
I didn't really want to know what I looked like. I didn't want to know the worst of what had actually happened to me. I didn't want to know my injuries. What I could see on the other people was a reflection of what I thought maybe I was going to be like, and that wasn't very pleasant.
My injuries were mainly burns. 23% of my body was burned to the 3rd degree, deep dermal. Both of my eardrums were punctured.
I had someone behind me with 2 legs blown off, who was writing letters to his family, saying goodbye.
I remember getting to a point and looking down and just seeing someone on the floor moving. They were black and they were obviously in a lot of pain. I just said I don't care if your legs are broken, because if you don't move now, there's no way you're not going to survive, so get up now. I'll help you all I can. So I remember just pulling him up and carrying his weight, just wrapped his arm around my shoulder and just helped him just get away from the fire.
A photographer captures Hannah Beth's rescue of Tom Singer, a 17-year-old Australian. Ali Imran and Idris arrive at a small mosque within earshot of the carnage.
Kami berangkat ke Masjid Al-Garubah dan letak sepeda motor di tepi masjid. Idris bilang ada orang akan ambil sepeda motor itu nanti.
kami baring di sana selama 15 menit. Tiba-tiba kedengaran siren ambulan. Aku terasa sedih. Ingat membawa bayi aku ke rumah sakit. Cuma sekali aku dukungnya.
Polly Miller's husband of 5 weeks, Dan, is missing.
Part of me, knew, I think, really that the chances of them getting out were so slim because, where I'd looked towards to my left was a wall of fire, and that's where they had been. But, I had got out, and therefore I assumed or hoped that others than Dan had got out.
Hannah-Beth Luke's boyfriend, Mark, was also vanished.
I remember standing on the roof of this car and just trying to look over the flames and just yelling Mark's name just again and again, and just becoming more and more desperate. And I remember looking back at the flames and knowing that as I didn't hear my voice my name being called, I knew in my heart then, if he wasn't calling my name, that was it.
Investigators in Bali were initially confronted with a scene so devastating that it took time to realize that this was a suicide bombing.
It took a number of days until we were firm in our opinion that there had been a suicide bombing. The forensic experts pointed us to one seat of one blast in Paddy's Bar, and in the ceiling directly above that blast there were some human remains. These remains were DNA tested and came back as the remains of one person, and therefore we had one person in contact with the device at the time it detonated, just above the waist level of that person.
The architects of the suicide attacks had left a highly visible trail of evidence that was quickly picked up by Indonesian and Australian investigators. They got their first breakthrough at the mosque where Idris and Ali Imran had abandoned the motorcycle.
People in the mosque reported to us that was a motorcycle left in the yard of the mosque. We identified that motorcycle was used by one of the suspects, Idris.
When we looked at the motorbike, it had 3 switches. It was wired to switch off the brake light, the light over the number plate, and isolate the motor. This bike was designed to defeat the traffic cameras, so the police would never be able to pick up the registration plate. Well, Bali doesn't have any traffic cameras.
And also from this vehicle, we could identify 3 persons who bought this used motorcycle.
From the motorcycle salesman, the police now had good descriptions of Ali Imran, Idris, and Amrozi. Then the investigators got their biggest break.
Unbeknownst to most people in Indonesia, a light truck in Bali has a vehicle identification number stamped in the axle to identify, where it came from. This number led us straight to Amrozi. He didn't know there was a number. I mean, we didn't know there was a number till a couple of days later.
Amrozi's appearance in court gave the outside world its first glimpse into the mindset of the conspirators. Amrozi became known as the Smiling Bomber.
Trials I didn't follow. I couldn't bear Amrozi going crazy and making the whole situation so much more painful, not just for me, but for the families that lost loved ones. I cannot imagine that pain that they would have felt watching and seeing that those men going and making a big theatre of it.
But that sort of personified Amrozi. Amrozi just had no understanding of what he'd done. He thought he was, you know, the jihad and all the rest of it.
Most of the other conspirators were soon rounded up. Idris, who was to escape a death sentence on a legal technicality. The two commanders, Samudra and Muklas, both sentenced to death and both defiant to the end. And Ali Imran, who expressed remorse for the attack, in prison for life, all confessed.
When I start, well, why are they talking? Some say because they've got nothing to lose. Others say, well, because they want to inflate this perception that they are these true masters of death.
The Bali bombing trials played out increasingly as macabre theatre. The last to be tried, Abu Bakr Bashir, the alleged leader of Jemaah Islamiyah, was sentenced to 2.5 years in jail for conspiracy. A perception in the West that he was a cog in the Al-Qaeda wheel merely enhanced his star quality among his acolytes.
There seemed to be this aspersion that Jemaah Islamiyah itself was the operational wing of Al-Qaeda. I mean, that's in actual fact how the group was portrayed, as the operational wing of Al-Qaeda. The problem with that approach is that it has the danger of actually creating the very conditions and the very environment which these governments so fear. In the West, the policymakers then construct this super organization that is organizing and coordinating all of these activities. That feeds into policy making, and it avails Al-Qaeda, because Al-Qaeda not only is able to visibly demonstrate its continued durability, it can show that, just look at what the West is saying about us.
Today, the land where the Sari Club and Paddy's Bar stood is inhabited only by the memory of that terrible night. Polly Miller spent almost 5 months in hospital, with burns to 40% of her body. Dan, her husband of 5 weeks, never made it out of the Sari Club.
It was a very weird sensation of having your life completely shattered, and I always sort of liken it to having a wine glass and someone just dropping it, and that's your life, smithereens. And you slowly, bit by bit, pick up the pieces and rebuild.
The memorial next to where the clubs had stood lists 202 names, including Dan Miller, Tom Singer, rescued by Hannah-Beth Luke, but who died 5 weeks later, and 7 of Simon Quayle's football team. Every name etched into the granite is a life lost, and many others ruined.
I had to phone Mark's parents. I mean, I couldn't even know what to say. I said, Ray, you know, there's no other way to tell you this. Mark's dead, you know. And he just started shouting no, you know, just shouting. And you could hear the thud of his knees, just as he fell to the floor. And I could hear his mum in the background starting to scream. And that was the most awful moment of all. And that's just one person